Test, test. Mic check. Okay, well, I'm looking at the tree. Okay. You know, maybe the tree wants to know about meditation. I don't know. What is consciousness? We've been trying to figure that out for ever. We don't really know. God. I think consciousness is God. The observer, the creator, and the creation. I think that when most people think of the word meditation, they think of, you know, like the Zen Buddhist monks, like personal meditation and whatnot. But meditation is actually something that you have to do in your daily practices all the time. A meditation, some could say it's a path towards enlightenment, if you want to view it that way. Some people do it for the medical benefits, meaning less stress, lower blood pressure, you know, things like that. But for myself, I believe I get something more out of meditation, something deeper. It's almost like I have a better understanding of myself. I have a better understanding of my mind. And that's not something most people would find important, but it's something you really don't know how important it is until you experience it for yourself. Some personal experiences when I was meditating. Well, of course, I've had a lot of you know, wacky visuals and whatnot, but I actually don't find those to be very important. I have had an intense feeling of oneness, and when I say that, I mean that it was through meditation I actually began to understand what that meant, to be one with everything, to be one with the universe. If I hadn't have had that experience through meditation, I would still be saying it, but have no idea what it meant. I think meditation is something that you can practice all the time, and the more you practice, the better you get. And the better you get, the more that you can actually experience that oneness with the universe, or that love. When it comes to astral projection, that's something I would really, really love to achieve. And I'm told I'm getting close to it because of what I'm able to achieve just before I go to sleep, meaning I'm able to get into that vibration state where it feels like my body's falling asleep, but my mind's kind of staying awake. However, unlike other people, I feel like I'm not able to ascend out of my body. I feel like I'm not able to leave my body, and I actually experience terrible, terrible sleep paralysis when I do get to that state. So it is something I still practice, but you can see why it would be hard or terrifying for me to continue trying that. All energy, all matter is vibrating at a certain rate. I feel that crystals might be vibrating at a much higher rate than most other things. So that's why I think it's handy to just keep one on your person at all time, or one in your pocket, or whatnot. It's good to meditate with crystals too. I think crystals change the vibratory frequency of people. However, I think the people have to allow themselves, or allow the crystal to do this for them. So some people could argue crystals do nothing. Maybe it's a placebo effect. There actually has been books written about how crystals are a placebo effect. However, it still has an effect, whether it's a placebo or whether it actually is vibrating at a much higher rate than everything else. So regardless, they do something for people. I can't really put my finger on what it is, but they do something for people. And people buy them for a reason, and people have them for a reason. So the thing that I find fascinating about crystals is that they are almost like rocks or stones. Yeah, it's not that they're formed on the earth, it's that they grow on the earth. And it's the patterns and designs that they grow themselves in. I've heard about a crystal that grows in the form of a star tetrahedron, but I'm not sure if that exists or not. I'd love to see one sometime. If you're familiar with quantum physics or quantum mechanics, you'll know that it's kind of the study of physics at a very, very small level. So studying very, very small objects, particles and atoms and, you know, stuff like that, quarks, like really, really small stuff. From my understanding, and it doesn't just work at a small level, it works at every level. Sacred geometry is kind of tying everything together through geometry. In the beginning, our consciousness created a sphere, we'll say. It had nowhere to go from there, so it went up and it created another sphere and another sphere. Now, if you want to look at this from a very, very small point, meaning maybe that was like the beginning of creation for us, was that seed of life being created. And if you actually look at an egg, like a human embryo, it actually looks exactly like a seed of life. The seed of life isn't just for creation of humans, it's for creation in general, of everything, of all matter. So if we were to take the seed of life and expand it to create the flower of life, which the flower of life is normally depicted within a bigger circle, but actually the flower of life should be infinite, an image that goes on forever. So it's kind of like circles within circles within circles. However, if you were to take that image, that 2D image of the flower of life, and make it 3D, then you kind of have like, you know, a 3D object of different spheres being interconnected and whatnot. Now, if you were to take from the center of one sphere and connect it to another, then not only do you have the picture of the spheres, but now you have a picture of straight lines, so curved lines and straight lines. From this, you can get Metatron's cube, and from Metatron's cube, you can get every platonic solid in the universe that we know of today. So that's kind of why sacred geometry is so interesting to me, is that I feel like it explains a lot in the sense of, after learning it, I now look at the world in a different way. It's better knowing that there's something behind all this. Sacred geometry might not be it, but sacred geometry is behind something, our interpretation or our views on the world. So it's kind of good to know that not everything is just random chaos, because sacred geometry is it's almost like a perfect science, and to know that that's behind everything kind of it gives me a feeling of comfort. We are all one. The universe is experiencing itself through you at this very moment. That can be very confusing, because you could be thinking, well, how is it experiencing itself through me and simultaneously experiencing itself through you? Time does not exist through the universe. Time is created up here. Time is an illusion. All matter, all energy, everything that is manifested, everything that is unmanifested, and everything that is incomprehensible is all the same. Love. Neil deGrasse Tyson kind of mentioned, I don't know what you would call it, the chimp alien theory, I don't know, but chimps are 1% less or 2% less in their DNA than human beings are. So we can look at a chimp who is 1 or 2% less in their DNA than we are, and they know sign language, they can figure out shapes, and, you know. So we look at them and we say, well, you know, we have toddlers that can do that. What's the big deal? So if there was a species of aliens or a race of aliens that came down and discovered us, and their DNA was 1 or 2% higher than ours was, they could say, oh, you know, they figured out math and geometry and physics, and, you know, they figured out gravity, and they can make satellites, and, you know, they can travel into space. But guess what? We have toddlers that can do that. So, in my opinion, if aliens were to ever come down and find us, it would be either they would do what Stephen Hawking said, where they would just come down and wipe us out and take our resources, or take our planet, or whatever. Or I would look at it in the way that Neil deGrasse Tyson looks at it. And he doesn't come out and say this, but I believe that if there was species or races of aliens that was 1 or 2% more in their DNA than we were, they would be able to feel so much more compassion, so much more love, so much more empathy for life. Whether it's human life or not, I think that they would have that general idea about life, and I don't think they would come down and destroy us or kill us. I believe that people talk about aliens at the paradigm shift meetings and on the radio show and whatnot because that is the atmosphere to talk about something like that. I think the idea for paradigm shift, it isn't just to wake people up and teach them about meditation and whatnot. I think it's a place where you can go and be open about all topics. Things that you couldn't normally talk about with the general public, or things that maybe your group of friends aren't interested in, but you are. You go to paradigm shift to talk about that type of stuff. I think aliens really interest people at the paradigm shift meetings because it's almost like its own mythology. It almost kind of is like, kicks back to religion in a sense of, so back, 5,000, 2,000, however many years ago, people didn't really have the answers to a lot of the questions that they were asking. So they used religion as kind of a basis for it, I think at paradigm shift, people are having a hard time explaining these feelings or explaining these emotions, or they really want to answer these questions. Where did we come from? How did we get here? And I think aliens, that's just another one of those mythologies that it seems to make sense with a lot of people. It seems to really resonate with them. So, the more studying they do, of course, the more they're going to discover about, how we are connected with aliens, or how aliens are connected with us, or whatever. I think it gives them comfort to talk about that or study that. So I really recommend, if you're into this stuff, try not to just strictly be into what goes on at paradigm shift meetings. If you have a different interest, if you have an interest in religion or music or anything like that, then feel free to do that. I've noticed myself personally that when there are people that get into this paradigm shifty stuff, as they would say, they kind of start ignoring religion, and they start ignoring other ideas, and they only stick with their own certain ideas. And the thing that bothers me about that is that, especially at paradigm shift meetings, people are supposed to have an open mind about things. Well, they're not supposed to my understanding. They're supposed to. So if religion gets brought up, or if we want to talk about religion, understand that these people, these religious people, are trying to come up with the same answers that we are, just in a different way. And even though many religions say that they found these answers, even though they haven't found these answers, it's still interesting to read what they think, to read what they believed. So if you read the Bible sometimes, certain verses, certain chapters, when they speak about God, there's two ways you can look at it. You can look at it in the literal sense of God, where there's a giant superhuman man watching us in the sky. Or think about it as the collective consciousness of the universe is God. The Bible begins to make a lot more sense if you think of it that way. So I recommend trying that.